Okay, thank you. Then we can start. And thank you for inviting me. Welcome, everybody, to this session. So, a few words about me. My name is Andrea, and I am from Italy, but I'm working and living in Denmark. I am MVP for in the data platform area, and I work in Pandora. So I hope that everyone knows Pandora. It's the company who makes jewels. My role in Pandora is running a Power BI environment and being the product manager for the SharePoint portal that we use for distributing the reports and the contents we build in Power BI. And since I'm doing Power BI administration and governance along with a colleague, this is why we started using APIs, and this is why we think that using APIs it's a good point for you to have a better control over your environment and to achieve automation. I have more than 20 years of experience in the world of data. I always worked with data, databases, BI, and I'm a speaker, a common speaker in many events worldwide. So again, today we talk a bit about Power BI REST APIs, how to achieve automation using APIs, creating a custom connector, and then using APIs via Power Automate. And this is almost full demo session, so there will be a short introduction. And after that, I will show you how to create a custom connector and how to create flows for calling the custom connector. So what are APIs? Service endpoints for embedding, administration, and user resources. This is the available set of Power BI REST APIs. There are plenty of categories. We will see it. And you can perform many tasks. You can perform automation. You can embed dashboard, reports, styles into a custom app. You can do auditing and or administration, because you can get the list of objects for your from your tenant. You can do reporting, and you can also do real-time streaming. When you call, oh, sorry, okay, this slide actually is not so clear. When you call an API, basically you have a URL, and this is the standard URL you read from the documentation. In this case, we are calling a report, and we are passing the report ID to the API. The output, it's always a JSON object. So you have a JSON object. In this case, I have a JSON object which gives me back the database ID, the report, the dataset ID, sorry, the report ID, the report name, the report's URL, and the embedding URL for the report. So I'm querying a specific report, and from that call, I'm getting some info. I guess the most important for my purpose is saving the dataset so that I can understand the lineage of the data, and I can use from there I can use the data source API for checking the data sources that are linked to these datasets, so that I can have the full lineage of my objects, for instance. Oh, again, sorry, there's something wrong with it. I thought I deleted some slides. I didn't, sorry. So that was actually the slide intended to be shown. So again, this is the URL and the JSON response object. You have the option to test the API. This is nice. I will show you how to do it. So in the official documentation, you can go and test the API, and I will show you how it works, so you figure out what kind of objects you get as a response, and what kind of parameters you pass if any parameter is needed. So you basically go in the REST API documentation, then you try, and this is the output. If the response code is 200, then you get a JSON object with some data that you can then use in your application. So how to use the API? Basically, in the Power BI environment, there are 3 ways of using API. So you can call APIs in Power BI embedded for embedding reports or dashboards into a custom app, for instance. You can call the APIs through a specific set of PowerShell commandlets, invoke Power BI REST method, and then there is the API set. So you can call APIs through command PowerShell. And you can also create a custom connector in Power Automate and invoke the APIs through custom connector. So today, in today's session, we are focusing on this application, how to create a custom connector in Power Automate, and how to call the APIs, add actions to the custom connector, and then use the APIs in your flow. Basically, what you need for setting up the scene and having a working environment is registering an app in Azure Active Directory, because the app gives you access to your tenant, and you can set up the list of permissions for the app. This is a very important step. So you define an app, then you create in the Power Automate environment, you create a custom connector. You add actions to the connector. Each action is an API call, and you create a flow. So I hope that the workflow is clear, because in Power Automate, you go and create a custom connector. This is not enough, because then you add API calls to the custom connector. Each API call is an action. Afterwards, for really using the custom APIs you created, you need to create a flow, but I will show you, so hopefully it will get more clear at the end of the session. If it's not clear, please tell me, because I mean the logical workflow is important to understand, and which step comes after which one. Okay, so I was very fast, actually. If there is any question, feel free to ask or to put in the chat. But after this short introduction, as promised, we go and do it live. So I will create a custom connector in Power Automate. I will show you how to add API calls and how to create flows for running, for invoking the APIs and then adding automation. Before that, I go and I show you this environment. So this is the official documentation. This is a Microsoft official documentation for the Power BI REST APIs. On the left, you see all the categories for the APIs. There are plenty of categories. You have admin, apps, capacities, dashboards, and if we scroll down, we have groups, we have reports, blah, blah, blah. Please pay attention that the word groups actually means workspaces. So in the Power BI world, the workspace, in the Power BI API world, the groups are still called, the workspaces are still called groups. So groups means workspaces. Then I go and I check any of these APIs, for instance, this one, gateways. And there is a set of APIs. If I go, for instance, this one. So under the category gateways, I have the get gateways API, and I have the explanation for that. So this API returns a list of gateways for which the user is an admin. So it gives me the list of my gateways, basically. And then please remember to check out for each set of API the permissions, because you need to understand what kind of permissions you need, and the permissions to be passed to the application. I will show you what does it mean, but check out what kind of permissions are needed for running an API. This is the endpoint of the API. Just it's a GET call, and it's a standard structure with the parameter, and in this case, parameter is gateways, and I can actually try it. So if I click here and I go and try, I need to sign in. I'm already logged in with, this is a demo environment. It's owned by me. It's my test environment that I use for testing and for running a presentation. So it's a very small environment and there is no real data. It's only demo data, but for the sake of this presentation is good. So I sign in. Oh God, I hope that I don't need. No, okay, fine. I was scared about having the multi-factor authentication, but I was already logged in, so that's fine. Okay, so I'm trying to test this API that calls the list of gateways. In this case, I don't need any parameter, so I can just go and run the API. If the API is fine, it was successful, so response code 200, okay. And this is the body, so this is the output. The output is a JSON file where I have the list of all gateways that I have on my machine. In this case, I have only one gateway, and this gateway is called in this way. It's my gateway, and this is the gateway ID. And then there are some other details about the gateway, including the gateway owner. I will say this will be the gateway owner, and so on and so forth. So this API gives me the list of my gateways, for example. And if I go and test any other API groups, I go and I say groups, and it gives me the list of groups that I can see. Returns a list of workspaces, because I told you workspaces, groups stands for workspaces. So this is the list of workspaces. And if I wanted to try the list of my groups, sign in again, and if I try to run, this is the list of all the workspaces that I can see as a user. This is a workspace, this is a workspace, this is a workspace, and so I have the list of all the workspaces that are under my user. If I go into the admin APIs, I can perform kind of the same operations. So for instance, getting the list of workspaces, getting the list of datasets, getting the list of gateways, whatever, on an admin level. So it means that as a tenant admin, get groups as admin, for instance, I can fetch the list of all workspaces in my organization, all the workspaces that I have in my organization. But, of course, I need a Power BI administrator role in my company. So this is exactly what the role that I am covering in Pandora. I have the Power BI administrator role, and so we can run queries across the full tenant. In this case, we read, for instance, the list of all the workspaces for my tenant, and the required set of permissions is tenant read all or tenant read write all. Okay, I'm not doing it. We will probably run it when we create the carton connector. And there are some parameters. We don't have time to go into details, but please check out the API documentation. This is pretty complete. So check out what you need, check out the URL and the JSON output that you get, because you need on when you create the custom connector. Okay. So this is about the documentation. Then let's go and see what else we need for creating our custom connector. What is needed is an API, an app registration. So in Azure Active Directory, I already registered an app. This is, again, my environment. So I am the owner, the admin. I can do whatever. So I have an application ID. And when you register an app, you know that you get application ID and application secret. You need the application secret because it gives you authentication. So remember when you create the application to create a new secret, and then this secret grants you authentication through Active Directory. The next important step here is to go on API permissions, because you need to pass the list of permissions that the API is requiring. So if I want to perform activities on a tenant level, because I am the tenant admin, I need to grant this set of permissions. It's either tenant read all or tenant read write all. In this case, I granted all the available permissions for the tenant, because of course I need to test it, so it's fine. But for instance, you see here you have the gateway or the dataset. So depending on the API, you might want to limit the scope for this application. So you can limit the scope to maybe to read all or to some objects, reports, groups, whatever. Okay, then you have your app registered. I already have the app registered, so that's fine. We can go and see how to create a custom connector. I'm going into Power Automate environment, and actually it is under data. I don't know why it's under data, but under data you have this tab which is called the custom connectors. So if I click on custom connector, I already have some custom connectors. I'm using them, and there are some flows running behind it. But let's say we want to create a new custom connector. So I create a custom connector from blank. Connector name is G Power Platform Bootcamp, Global Power Platform Bootcamp 23. Then there are a few steps. My advice here is that, you don't need to understand, let me say, the steps. It's just filling in a form with some data, and honestly, I don't remember all the data. I don't remember all the steps, so I just have my file here ready to be for copying and paste the values, because it's not that I need to remember values. And there is nothing to understand for filling. There are a couple of pages you just need to fill in. So let me add a picture, and then I have to find out where the picture is, because I don't remember where I put it. Maybe it's here. Yeah, okay. So let's add the logo of the. This is of course it's optional. I can add the picture. I can skip it. I can add an icon background color. We skip it. Description. Global Power Platform Bootcamp 23. Then the host, it's I have here. It should be API powerbi.com. API powerbi.com, base URL, it's slash, and then I create the connector. This is just the first step. I need to perform 3-4 steps, 3-4 pages before the connector is fully operational. So let's wait. Okay, so the connector has been created. It means that I can go on the next page. The next page is security. Here, I define the connection. where are you? What's wrong here? Okay, so I say authentication is auth2, and the provider it's Azure Active Directory, because I registered an app in Active Directory. So the authentication comes through the app I registered in Active Directory. Let me go and check the application ID. Application secret. No. Okay, application secret, authorization URL should be okay. No, login, Windows.net. Tenant ID common, it's fine. Resource URL, this one. So you need is not that you can, you see is not that you can remember everything. Just keep it on hand, and every time you need it, just copy and paste the values. And I think that's it. Scope blank, and redirect is automatically created. Let's see. Okay, so connector has been created and updated, but till now we still did nothing because it's just the connector. Now what we need is to create actions in the connector. The action is the actual API call. So I go and check the documentation. Let's say that I want to see the gateways. It's an easy one. So gateways, get gateways. Okay. So, okay, so this is the URL that I need. Then I go in my custom connector and I say add a new action. Okay, so just a short description. Get gateway gateways list. I need to give a unique identifier to this operation. I usually put the name of the API, so it's a gateway. So but it's just a unique identifier. You can do whatever you want. You can put whatever you want here. So get gateways list, fine. And I go here. Okay, then I need to define the call. The best option is go and click import from sample. I checked into the documentation. This is a get action. So I define it as a get action, and then I paste the URL. Import. Okay. No response for that. Yeah, okay, I could, but we will do it directly in the flow. So okay, so let's update the connector, and let's add another action. I can add as many actions as I want here. So for one connector, I can have plenty of actions. Okay. So I go and I add a new action, and the new action might be that I want to read the list of groups. So as an admin, groups, get groups as an admin, and pay attention to the fact that by default there is a parameter here. So you need to go check the documentation and figure out the parameter. In this case, it's the number of groups to be retrieved, because I guess there is a limit. Yeah, because the upper limit it's 5,000. So we need to go and read the documentation. This parameter is mandatory and must be in the range. Since this is my demo environment, I have a little number of workspaces, so no problems. In a real environment, that might be an issue because it's easy that you have thousands of workspaces. Okay, so did I copy? I don't think I did. So let's go here and copy the URL, and let's add a new action. Get groups as admin. Get groups as admin. Yeah, exactly. There is a space. Okay, fine. And import again from sample. Just a get. Copy and paste. This is the URL, and there is a parameter here now. And it's actually saying me that there is a parameter. Okay, so let's update the connector. So every time you want to add an API call to the connector, you need to add a new action. And as I told, that you can have as many actions as you want. I don't think there is a limit. I never hit. Okay, so I go, and now I have a connector created. I have 2 new actions. Let's see what I can do now. This page, we don't need it. We can skip it. So we go to the test page. Into the test page, we can, before calling the API calls, we can actually test. So I can create a new connection from here, and then I have 2 actions that I can test. The first one is get gateway lists, gateways list, and I'm testing. Okay, status 200, so it's okay, and this is the output. This is the JSON file with my gateway ID. Let's test the second action. Click here. No. Click here. Come on. Okay, yes. And since there is a parameter defined, I have to pass a parameter. Let's say 4. So the top 4 workspaces. Test operation. So in this case, the output is 4 groups coming from my tenant. And as you can see, I have some workspaces here. It's not that I have that many, as I told you, and you see that the names are matching, because if I go, this is called data stories gallery, and I have a workspace which is called the data stories gallery, and I have another workspace which is called financial controlling. Let's see, financial controlling. Okay, so it works. Then it's fine. I created my connector. I defined the authentication through Active Directory. I added some actions to the connector. So the connector is ready to work. Every time you want to add a new action, you just go on editing the connector and you add a new action. The next step is to create a flow for using the connector. So I go on my flows and I create a new flow, instant cloud flow, because I want to trigger this flow. So I create a new flow and I call it GPPB 23 gateways. Manually trigger this flow, just create the flow. Okay, so I add a new step to the flow, and this is actually a custom. So if I say, let me click on custom. Oh, if I click on custom, so here, what I see is the list of all my flows. Sorry, my custom connectors. So these are all the custom connectors that I created. And if I select any of the custom connector, from here, I see the list of actions that I defined inside the connector. Okay, so I hope this is clear. If it's not clear, please ask me. We will review or we'll explain again. So I define the custom connector, and when I invoke the custom connector from the steps in Power Automate, I see the list of actions that I defined. In the other connectors, I have some other, as you see in this connector, I have some other actions that I'm performing. So I see the list of all actions that I defined when I create the custom or in the custom connector definition. Let's get back to the, not this one, I want to have the other one, so the one that I just created, so this one, and let's call the first action, get gateway list. There's no parameter, so it's fine. I can just go and run. If I run, this is what's happening. I saved, sorry, now I can run. So let's go and run. Come on, yeah. Run the flow. Continue. Run the flow. Okay. The flow is running. It should be pretty fast. Okay, succeeded. Let's have a look on the output. Okay, so it's a very simple flow, as you can see, very short, and this is what you get as output. You get this JSON file, which gives you, which gives you my gateway. Wait, what's wrong here? The gateway info. So I have all the info about my gateway, and I have the JSON file. So probably the next step might be adding an action to parse the JSON file. So I can go and I say, okay, then you get as an output a JSON file, just parse the JSON file. And the content is coming from the previous call. The schema, don't bother me, the schema is coming from the documentation. So if I want to say how the JSON file looks like, I go into the documentation here, and I go into the gateways, check out documentation. This is the standard JSON file that I'm getting as an output, so just copy, pass as a payload into this action. If I say done, save. Okay, so this step will parse the JSON file. So the next one might be writing this data somewhere. In my company, what we are doing is that we are saving all of these data. We are calling APIs every day, and we are saving this data actually in a database. So there are some other actions. So there's a pipeline for storing this data into a database. So you read, parse the JSON file. This is what you get, and you can get all the single fields from this JSON file and use in a next step. Might be writing somewhere in a SharePoint or whatever you think, or database, whatever. Let's do the following with the other actions that we created. So we go and we create an automated flow, GPPB 23, and that was work groups. Okay. No, sorry, wrong action. Should be an automated instant. Sorry, instant. Okay, instant create. Actually, here I'm defining I'm defining a parameter because I need to pass the number of workspaces. Number of work, because the API wants a parameter. So I'm defining a parameter here. Oh, I can call it workspaces. That's fine. So I'm defining a parameter and I'm defining a new step, custom, gppb, get groups as an admin. And this is, since this action asks for a parameter, I can add workspaces somewhere here. So it's coming from the previous step. That's fine. And let's add as a new step parse JSON action, but it's the same. Parse JSON. Okay. Read from here. Then I need to check out from the documentation in the admin. In the admin category groups, get groups as admin should be this one. Copy. Let's pass here. Let's save. And let's see if we are able to run this flow. We are it. Okay, so let's try to run this flow. I run, but if you notice, now is asking for a parameter because I defined a parameter. This API wants a parameter, so I need to pass a parameter here. The parameter is the number of workspaces. So let's say 50. It's fine because I have a small number of workspaces. So let's see. Okay, it was successful. So it's calling the API. The API is giving me the list of all the workspaces in my environment. So this is the list of all the workspaces. I have the workspace name. I have the workspace state. If it's on dedicated capacity, blah blah blah. So it's fine. And the next step is to parse this JSON and then giving me basically columns, fields that I can use in next step. Okay, I want to show to you a couple of other flows because right now we are just reading. And actually, this is what we usually do because in Pandora we call all these APIs for reading everything from our environment, from workspaces to reports to users to datasets, gateway, whatever. And we collect all the data on a daily basis. But there is something else you can perform with APIs, because you can also perform write or delete operations. So for instance, if you go into a group, what you can do is that you can add a group user to your environment, to your workspace. So in this case, the action is a post. You can post and add a user to a workspace. For that, check out documentation. You need to pass basically three values. You need to pass the workspace ID, the group, the permissions for the group, and the name of the account. So it's if it's either an account or a personal account or an app. So you need to pass the name of the account and the permissions. So I created one flow for that. I already have one flow somewhere here that performs this operation. So add the user, this one. I'm calling a custom connector. So I created an action in this custom connector. And as you can see, I have three parameters to be passed to the flow. Workspace ID, because add the user to a workspace, which one? then the email address, and then the user right, because okay, is he a viewer, member, admin, contributor, what kind of access we grant? So let's say that we have this workspace, leverage Power BI API, and as of today, right now, I have 2 persons in this. This is me, and I am an admin role, and this is a fake user with a member role. I want to add a new one with a viewer role, and I perform it using this flow and the API, which adds a user to a group. So let me run. I need to pass 3 values, so I need to pass the group ID, then I need to pass the username. It's fake user Carlo Bianchi, IMT web.info. This is my account, my tenant, and the user right viewer should be this way. Okay, let's run the flow and let's see. Okay, succeeded. So the flow succeeded. Let's have a look here. I reload the page, and if I check the access, I have the user Carlo Bianchi added as a viewer to the group. So think about bulk insert, for instance. If you need to perform a bulk insert, you can use the APIs for that. The other way around, you can remove a user. So same custom connector, I can also remove. So I can delete. In this case, the action is a delete. I go here, and there is an API that is called delete. So if I run this flow, I need to pass again the workspace ID. So remove the user from this workspace, and the user is called Carlo Bianchi at amtweb.info. Run the flow. Done. Let's see. Okay, succeeded. Let's go and reload again, and the user should be no longer here. Okay, the user has been removed. Fine. Okay, so that was my last demo. Yes, so I hope it was clear. If it's not clear, ask questions. It's important to understand the steps for me again from the app, granting access to the app, creating the custom connector, adding actions to the connector, and creating the flow, which calls the custom actions. Yeah, time for questions.
I don't know if we had any questions so far, but it was a very interesting session. And yeah, if there will be any questions, please stay a little bit on the call, and you can take those in the chat. Yeah, I don't see any. And
okay.
Only comment, it was a really nice presentation.
Okay, thank you. I hope it was inspiring, let's say, or helpful, hopefully.
Yeah, it was not only about a PI, but also about building the custom connector, which was, mixing two together, 2 of those. So I really think it was really interesting.
Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank
you for having me.
For your
Thank
time.
you very much.